Thank you. Where is it? Okay. Let me just double check the slides.
It's wonderful.
Wait. I really don't see it. Weird things I'm watching.
We're not looking.
There is a spiritual book I was reading from somebody from Tibet. Anyway.
You want to sit down?
I'm good. I'll just stand. Thank you so much. Okay, so hi everyone.
Hello.
I'm so happy you guys are here. It feels less like a formal presentation. It's more like a family reunion. So I'm really appreciative, really grateful. Truly, I mean, this is an intellectual home to me and for all of you guys. I have my adopted family here. I have my really good friend here. I have my co-sponsors for Rotary Club here. Really good friends here. So I'm really appreciative and really grateful. So today I'm going to talk about solving the Indian Health Service Federal Underfunding Challenge. It's a co-authoring work with James Kennedy. He is Native American, I am not, but he is the one who introduced me into Native American issue, and I grew sympathy and learned history, and trying to help them to solve their problems, basically, to improve their welfare. So today's talk is based on 2 recent peer-reviewed publications. Yay! So as you know, I'm a tenure-track professor. Peer-reviewed publications are very important to me to get tenure. So this one is published in Health Affairs. It's a top 1 health policy journal, and it's not just academic journal. It's really read by people in Congress in DC. The headquarters is in DC, and people really, policymakers, lawmakers in DC really read it, and hopefully we'll get calls, to shape some policy. This one is basically proposing a novel solution to solve their underfunding problem. And this one is published in Valuing Health. This is the top 1 health economics journal. The impact factor is 6.0. That's the highest I can get so far. You can't compare with New England Journal of Medicine or JAMA, because their impact factor, or Lancet or British Medical Journal, their impact factor is 150, which means that in president debates, the candidates will cite those journals. But this one, it can have some impact. And this piece is about measuring the severity of the underfunding problem. So basically, logic is that we measure the severity of the problem, and then we figure out how to solve the problem. By the way, the Native American topic is very, I would say you don't see it very often from academic journals, and actually not very often from media, nationwide or global-wide. I know that global-wide, in Australia and in Canada, there are indigenous population, some indigenous population, their local media cover that, but global-wide, nationwide, it's just not covered very often. So for this publication, it's not just your intellectual merit, you also have to do some networking with the editors. So I remember last summer in a conference, I was basically persuading the chief editor. Back then, he was the managing editor. I was persuading him. I said, how could I never see any article, any policy piece in your journal for decades? Are you guys not interested in this population? It's like, oh, we are very interested. We're very interested. It's just that no one submitted anything, and we have very rigorous peer review process. So after that process, just nothing gets published. So he said, do you have anything? I said, absolutely. At the time, actually, I didn't have anything. But when he asked me, yeah, exactly. When he asked me, yes, I have something. I I'll send you right away. And I went back and I just, closed my door and it worked several months and then I got it. And also once the piece arrived at his desk, the then managing director and now chief editor, when the piece arrived at his desk, it's actually the two piece. It's a very comprehensive way. It's basically a doctoral thesis, to be honest, but we submitted the whole thing to him. But he at the time didn't formally reject it. He just sent me a long email and listed out 4 arguments, basically criticizing how bad the whole thing is. And the one main argument was that he said you have prior assumption, meaning that you are just subjectively sympathetic for a particular population. You think there is an underfunding problem, but the problem does not exist. That's what he was saying. He just didn't say that very clearly. So I had to cite the Congress reports with numerical evidence to show how the whole hospital system was underfunded compared to other federal programs, so that was able to persuade him with evidence. So you have to really logically argue without any emotion, but truly argue with evidence. And then one more thing is that the then chief editor was, I think his name is Alan Weiss. He's the professor at the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard. So I emailed him and I just sent him the abstract, and then I asked him, I said, would you be interested? Would your journal be interested? He replied immediately. He said, yes, we are very interested in this topic. Just go ahead and submit. So I told the managing editor, I said, by the way, chief editor says, it's interesting. Then he's like, okay. He's like, we just want the meat, meaning that we just want the novel part of the whole thing, which is our novel solution to solve this problem. And then he said, the other parts about the history of Native American, the hospital system, we're not very interested. Just send us the need and we'll publish, this novel thing. But long story short, I was very worried because I sent this to JAMA and the doctors group, their journals. It was rejected by the highest clinical journals. That's why I was like, I don't know where this will be published. And this is a really also first of its kind of evidence using the past 15 years data. So when So when I sent to this journal, this is Top 1 Health Economics Journal, I was really worried, but also I'm kind of still have some kind of hope because they're double-blind process. So double-blind, it means that your names and your institution's names will be removed from the manuscript. And you also don't know who the reviewers are. So both sides are anonymous. It's fair. I would say it's the most fair.
As a reviewer, I can usually figure out who the submitter was.
You can? Okay. You're obviously very experienced. So for me at that time, I was like, okay, great. This gives me some hope because I have a Chinese name. And our institution is OU, which is ranked nationwide 120. It's not the top 1, top 10, top 20. No, it's not. And there could be bias that people would think, okay, you're just OU, you're not top rank. But long story short, when I received the 3 reviewers' comments, this is the first time when I see a reviewer start with a comment with the word congratulations. Yes, I was about to cry and I ran to my research assistant's office and I'm so excited to show them. So basically people value the experts, which I don't know where they are in this country. They value the contribution that you added to the knowledge and to the policymaking. So I will share with you, those are anecdotes behind the thing. It's just a lot of work. I'm really proud to share with you the content. Wait, sorry, just one sec. This one is not, sorry.
Oh, it's loading.
Oh, it's loading.
That little thing.
what should we do?
Maybe restart it.
Rapid, pretty hard.
It looks like it might be stuck in the loading loop.
Okay, how should I restart?
Is that a map?
Yeah, it's not.
Jim, can you say again the name of the two journals that you submitted to?
Yes, go ahead. One is Health Affairs. You can Google search it. It's.
Yeah, I think it might be stuck.
Okay, just close it. Maybe just close that.
Look for both of these.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think if you open it up again, it might.
Okay, I'll open it again. Okay. Okay, great. I hope this time it will work.
Here we are.
Yes, okay, great. So first of all, I want to thank PHF Foundation, which is Oklahoma City local. They've been funding me for quite several research projects, and I'm really grateful. Without that, I wouldn't be able to accomplish anything. And the other grant is a sub-award from National Institute of Health. And also, these bunch of people I really appreciate. These 1, 2, 3, these are 4. These 4 are doctors in OU who know, who are experts on Native American health. Daniel Sledge is scientific, like a political scientist. Justice Dustin Rowe, Lou and Joe know.
I'm gonna tell him he will love that. He's gonna be so happy.
He's the one.
He couldn't come today. He started.
He really saved our face, our reputation, you guys know, because I was proposing a different novel solution, and I also sent it to Joe, and Joe, you were like, I think the logic works, but you need to check with real Indian law experts, remember? So I really appreciate it. So that real Indian law expert was Justice Rowe, and I reached out to him, and he said, no, but I cannot talk about federal policy. I said, well, but at least, like off the record. So he had a 1.5 hour lecture in his office for me, holding Indian Territory map and giving me a history lecture. And he didn't understand what I was asking. I was trying to understand what he's telling me. And after 1.5 hours, he finally realized what I was asking, and I finally realized what he told me was that the other alternative solution is not valid. If you propose that, you will lose your face and reputation among experts nationwide. So I told him he saved us. So really appreciate it. I will tell you what that solution is and why it's not working when we do the presentation. And Joe, thank you so much for telling me at least the logic is making sense logically. And Justice Jerome Holmes, he's not here, but he's also the one who trying to connect me with Indian law. And my dad, who's a CPA, he does finance kind of work for his long time. My friend Alexander, who also provide general comments as an intelligent reader, so I can assess how the general population would be able to understand or not. So I'm really grateful for their help. So the outline basically is briefly the history, the problem, the methods, and then the results. And the results are a deceptively very simple framework, but it's from an economic perspective of trying to understand the nature of the IHS underfunding problem, and then quantitative data to measure how severe the underfunding problem is, and then qualitative data to understand why it's underfunded, why, at different level of budget approved process or steps, why IHS budget was cut for whatever reason, for what reasons, not whatever is, for what exact reason a senator says we need to cut their budget for this reason, and whether that reason is making sense or not, and then what are the existing solutions being proposed so far, and why they all failed, or none of them is working. And then we'll propose our own novel solution. Why one didn't work, because Justice Rowe, shared with me some information, and all of a sudden I realized, okay, that's not a valid solution, and then we propose a different solution. Basically, where the money comes from. Basically, it's about financing, where to get the money to fund them, to meet the gap. That's the thing. Now, I hope it's not happening.
Oh no. Is it a big file?
It's not, it's just a PDF. I think I probably opened too many other tabs. So I probably have to close this, should I? Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's getting stuck
So-
again.
so,
Is
okay.
it graphics heavy or?
No, it's not. I just opened too many
Yeah.
tabs. I will have to close all other tabs
I think
in order
so,
to open this.
But I
I'm
think
so
you also
sorry.
need to force quit it.
Yeah, let's just close all these tabs. Just close
Okay.
here. Just close everything here.
Can I just quit Google?
Yes, just Google, quit Google everything.
Sorry.
No worries. Thank you.
And-
So that I can make sure the time is.
Well, the preview is stuck, so we have to force quit it.
Okay.
See, there it is again. It's just
Sorry.
not responding. I'm just gonna
We
I'm just
put
gonna-
everything there.
I'm just gonna kill everything else.
Yeah, we'll just quit everything. Sorry.
Okay. And no report back to that.
Anybody know
Okay,
where
great.
the
Okay,
Thank you so
fingers
much.
crossed.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't know.
June, where are the mountains?
Yeah, I can see the mouse.
No, where are they? Where are those mountains? Is it a picture you took or?
No, it's background.
It's just
It
background.
comes with
Okay,
it.
I have this time. There will be no problem at all. Okay,
Keep going, I guess.
I'm so sorry.
Oh,
Why?
There's something wrong with the PDF, I think.
Okay, and then what I could do is go to.
Can you just pull it up on Chrome or?
Yeah, I will just go to Google then.
No, if worse comes to
No,
worse.
it should be, okay, it should be, I'm so sorry. It should be Outlook.
What was the source before it became a PDF? Can you go back to the PowerPoint?
Right.
You know, if worse comes to worse, you can
Oh,
just talk and tell
I
us.
can do,
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure you know this like the back of your hand.
Yeah, you can just talk and tell us about it.
I want to show you, yes, but I wanted to show you guys okay, here is the Google, okay, great. So this is my Google Drive file, so let's go with this one. Okay, all right,
Look.
okay, let's,
Very good.
okay, great.
Slideshow.
Okay, basically, I don't know where the slideshow is. Oh, there you go.
You
Yes.
can read it.
We can read it fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so the history, I'll go quick. So the U.S. has the federal Indian trust responsibility since the 18th century. It promised all the proper healthcare, education, and protection, somewhat military protection, in exchange for tribal lands. And then starting from 1921, the Schneider Act is the first time authorized the discretionary spending, not mandatory spending, but by this promise, it's supposed to be in exchange for tribal lands, it's supposed to be mandatory spending. If we just interpret the exchange in a very literal sense. But the act in 1921 first authorized discretionary spending on Indian affairs, including establishing Indian Health Service. And then in 1976, there is this new act trying to address the lack of funding source and also the poor patients' health quality. Basically, what this law in the 1976 is basically recognizing the hospital system nationwide is lacking the money, and the outcome in terms of patient healthcare quality was really, really poor. And we're trying to solve it, but it's unsuccessful. Because if it's successful, we don't have anything to work on today. And then in 1975, there is this new act trying to give tribes more freedom and saying that, okay, you know, if you guys, like Chickasaw Nation or Choctaw Nation, if you guys have your own resources, you can take your proportion of the federal government owe you in terms of healthcare, that your proportion of the IHS budget to your tribe population, you take that money, you add whatever tribe resources, you have money from oil, money from casino, whatever resources you have and you want to combine with the IHS funding to run your own tribe healthcare facilities. So you open your own hospital systems. But this type of tribes, you have to be really wealthy in order to do that, and most of the tribes don't have that resources. And then today, IHS basically it's like overall system. It's composed by 3 types of facilities. One is traditional IHS facilities. Basically, it's a federal facility, federal facilities and federal employees, and then the tribe facilities and the tribe employees, or I don't know where, maybe they're federal, I'm not sure, but the tribe facilities, these are operated by tribes with both the IHS and their own resources, and the urban Indian clinics, the youth facilities, they receive probably very small proportion of their funding through the IHS, but then most of the, because these are the Indian people in urban area, like Jim himself. So these are the people who have their jobs in the urban areas, so they have private insurance. So the youth clinics, they have a lot of Indians who have their private insurance. So all these facilities provide services to about 2.6 or 3 million Native Americans in about 574 federally recognized tribes across 37 states in the United States. It's a lot, but it's also not a lot if you look at the proportion of the U.S. population. It's just like 1 to 2, at most 3% of the U.S. population. That's why it was kind of like neglected a little bit. But they're still human beings, right? So they still need healthcare. So we're trying to address their problem. Now, the underfunding problem with the numerical evidence that I sent to the chief editor and finally had a chance to be published is basically the federal agency, federal reports. One is from the GAO, the other is Commission on Civil Rights. This is legislative auditor, and I love auditing. My dad is auditor, so like I got so excited looking at the auditor reports and trying to figure out, okay, this institution has all kinds of problems, and how can we solve their problems? So I'm really problem solver. And Civil Rights Commission. So what they found was about 20 years ago, the federal appropriation, congressional appropriation per capita to different health-related federal programs. To IHS, it was $2,000. To Bureau of Prisons, that's $4,000 per capita. So basically, so when I saw this, I might have kind of like subject to the interpretation is that, okay, wow, so per capita funding to prisoners would be double the per capita funding to Native Americans. And I'm like, are you saying the Native Americans are not even worth the prisoners? You know, so that's a little bit like subject to the interpretation, but this is like a really sharp contrast. And then to Medicare, 5,000 VA, 5,000 Medicaid, 7,000. So you can tell that for all the federal government's health programs, the IHS is absolutely the lowest, the bottom. And then 16 years later, this is the federal spending, but notice that appropriation and spending are different. But spending is definitely lower than appropriation. So the spending data shows that IHS, 16 years later, IHS per capita spending was about 4,000. It's just doubled a little bit. But this is nominal value, so if you deflate, it's just probably like a 3,000 or something. And then the prisoners, that's 8,000. Still, yes, twice as high as the Native Americans. And then look at everybody else. The Medicaids, almost 9,000, the veterans 12,000, and Medicare 15,000. So everybody has a reason to be funded, but this is the lowest. So relatively speaking, we do see an underfunding problem consistently throughout decades.
The populations have the same needs, because, with the Indians, you'll have people of all ages, the 20-year-olds who don't need anything or don't show up, the children. Others have older groups, I don't know.
Yes, the Medicare has, yeah, thank you. Medicare has older, like all of them older groups, but the prisoners could have, similar ages. Medicaid also might have similar ages.
But also, can IHS, people who get benefits under IHS, can they double up in
Yeah,
other
so
categories?
you're definitely right. Yes, they can. If they go to prison, they might get the funding through prison. Yes, if they're lower income, they can get covered by Medicaid. If they're veterans, they can, of course. But here is the thing. The thing is that if you really interact with the Native Americans, what you will get from them, they would say, so here's the thing. They know that if they opt out or they try to find other resources, it will save IHS spending. But because if let's say last year's spending of IHS decreased because they find other resources, the next year the budgeting will be decreasing as well. They don't want that to happen. So that's why they stick with the IHS and try not to get services from other insurance services, like insurance programs.
Just as a maybe part of an explanation for why BOP gets doubled, I think it's partly because of the Eighth Amendment, right? So the prisoners could raise a claim of cruel and unusual punishment if they're deprived of medical care at a sufficient level, and that's not something that the Native Americans could claim because obviously if they're not in custody.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So there is that influence,
Yeah.
that law. I see. Maybe that's
It's a
part of the.
constitutional claim.
I see.
There's, if they underfund the IHS, there's no real consequences to the government.
Oh.
Right, they're not going to get sued under the Eighth
Right.
Amendment.
Well, but here's the thing. It's a trust responsibility. Isn't trust responsibility also a legal obligation?
One would think, but that lawsuit has been consistently over time, I also do Indian law, proven to not be successful.
You guys constitutional law experts, so thank you. And then, okay, of course, because of the lack of funding, you cannot hire really good doctors, and a lot of posts are vacant in remote areas. It's just reservations. And then you cannot renovate your facilities, your medical equipment, everything. So at the end of the day, the healthcare quality gets really, really bad. And then overall, Native Americans has less than 68 years of life expectancy at birth. The males are even lower. To be honest with you, I know through Jim, I know several people who suicide who are Native Americans. Some of them are family members, not mine, but people get suicide, and the survivors, they themselves keep thinking about suicide. It's just really, really sad when you really interact with them. Like I drove to the tribes and I danced with them and trying to get to know people. That's the story, is that once you get closer. And then females are slightly better, but overall, less than 68 years compared to the average American 78 years. And this is even not a fact that we need to be proud of. Do you know in Japan, it's more than 88 years of life expectancy, and they spend very little on their health care. So we spend tons of money, what do we get? Yeah, see, so it's just really not doing the work. Okay, so the methods, first is very simple conceptual framework from an economic perspective. I have the chart, I will show you very soon. And the quantitative data, basically we went to Congress websites, IHS websites, White House websites, we got all the documents and everything, and trying to extract the dollar values throughout the 6 steps. So it includes the IHS as an agency, what monetary values that it proposed to the president, and what president proposed to the House, what House approved, and what Senate approved, and finally what they all agreed to in order to have it enacted. value, and how much IHS actually spend. But you know, you can imagine the hypothesis is that this is all budget cuts. Every step is going to be decreasing, right? The whole thing is trying to figure out who's the badass, cut the budget, right? So this is like, as an objective researcher, you know, I'm just getting the data, trying to figure out if somebody is doing like policy advocacy or lobbying in Washington D.C., they probably wanted to read it specifically at which step. If it's Senate, cut it. Then if they have like policy advocates, if they have very little resources, then they wanted to focus on the very step who cut the resource to influence, and to focus on actually identify which senator said what exact reason to cut it. So you probably wanted to influence the exact senator that cut it. So anyways, but in this presentation will not show that. And then qualitative data, that's we listen to all those transcripts of all these committees and subcommittees in the Senate and the House. And I remember during summer, my research assistant and I, we just put earphones and trying to listen to all those hearings. Some of them, they have transcripts, other times they don't have transcripts. Like a 2-hour hearings, we're just listening. Just like trying to extract the reason. So it's really a lot of work. That's also the anonymous reviewers, they were very excited. They were like, this is the most comprehensive documents that they've ever seen. So the conceptual framework is very simple. Basically, the US federal government has, so what the US federal government, it's a social plan. It has this objective function. So you are economic kind of like entity, and you have your objective function subject to a budget constraint. And the US federal government's objective function is to maximize the total welfare of the US population. All of us, okay? Subject to limited fiscal resources, that's a budget constraint. And that equals to the federal tax revenue plus federal debt, right? And notice that the debt is not coming from nowhere. At the end, you can borrow now, right? You pay interest, but at the end of the day, it has to be paid off by tax revenues ultimately. So we all have to contribute. So this is like not something you can just keep it increasing. You can't. Okay, so this is limited resources, and the standard criteria, 2 standard criteria to judge, not necessarily judge, but to assess or evaluate how good a resource allocation is. It includes, basically come theory, it includes efficiency and equity. So the efficiency here, trying to assess the federal government's resource allocation, they have to face a lot of trade-offs. They have to face how to trade off between Native Americans and non-Native Americans. We're all non-Native Americans, you see. So, and then they have to trade off all the spending, all the issues that they need to spend on domestically and abroad, such as send the troops to a overseas base, something like that, and they also have to do trade-off, like even within the border, they have to trade off between health and non-health issues. What we are talking about here is just this IHS underfunding problem. It's just that Native American health, that particular combination that they need to the US federal government has to decide. So basically, this is not that the only one problem the federal government has to face. They have to face all kinds of trade-offs. So they need to look at the overall decision to make a decision. So basically, look at the allocative efficiency. The definition of the allocative efficiency is that you allocate the resource in the way the members of society prefers. They value that way of allocating the resources. Allocate resources on items that they really value. Okay, so for the Native Americans, we just look at the members of society because it's a melting pot, right? So we look at members of society. The Native Americans, they definitely prefer increasing the funding to their own health, their hospitals, to their allocate funding to their own health services. So they would view the IHS underfunding problem, that underfunding, as inefficient. Whereas the non-Native Americans, So basically in the past, well, let's say, the underfunding has been there for decades. And it's been decided by Congress. If all the Congress representatives, if we really assume that they represent all the constituents, the Congress underfunded IHS, basically that behavior revealed the preference of the US general population not wanting to, not prefer to give them a lot of funding. So basically that's behaviorally revealed the preference that like the underfunding IHS is actually an efficient way of allocating resources to them. So basically, in other words, this is not even like talking about the political sense. This is just an economic definition. So therefore, these two groups, they disagree on what is efficient, what is not efficient. Therefore, they disagree on the proposed solution. That's why the two proposed solutions failed, because there were two bills in 2001 to 2004. So two Congresses, the senators, Nighthorse Campbell, he's an American senator, and he proposed mandatory entitlement in mandatory spending on IHS. At first, the Congress, it failed. It was never even received any hearing nor a vote, so he failed. The second time is 108th Congress, he proposed, and he was very well prepared. He got joint hearings from the Senate and the House, and and they had committees revise the bills, and it went all the way to the floor of the Senate to be voted. However, it was never voted. It was still not voted. So at the end of the day, you can trace back because this fundamental disagreement. So the solution would, I wouldn't say never work, but it just simply is just not the case. So I would tell any researcher or policymaker or lawmaker, I would tell them keep trying if you want, but I don't see much hope for that. So we still have to have a pragmatic solution to solve this problem. Okay, and then based on equity, basically in terms of efficiency, you cannot have efficiency argument to allocate more funding to IHS, solve their problem. And you could only use equity. I'm not going through too much details, but you only probably can use equity. Basically, trading equals equally, trading unequals unequally. You can use the argument and say, oh, Native Americans have the lowest life expectancy, they have probably the lowest income levels, so that they're unequal, they're disadvantages. Therefore, when you're allocating the resources using equity criteria, federal government probably needs to allocate more resources to them. So not using that to argue for more funding, but use this to argue for more funding. And there are different benchmarks to calculate per capita, and we discussed about each of them, and we recommend a particular benchmark. Now the quantitative data, I don't want to bother you with this, but I just want to summarize what the quantitative data shows. So basically, after the COVID, the entire agency budget has been much lower than pre-COVID, and then particularly when we decompose the entire agency budget, we found that the decline was driven by service budget, because basically the Congress cut clinical services budgets a lot more than before COVID, but the facility budgets have not been cut. Basically, it means that after COVID, it received a lot less budget, and especially the clinical services, it's not. It's the clinical services that's being cut. And more interestingly, who is the one who cut the budget? So overall, so we compare those 6 variables throughout time, like time series, and what we found was that the president proposed budget was higher than Congress enacted budget. So basically it was the Congress, not the president. However, I cannot say about which administration, because we already have 15 years data. If we have like like half-century data, we might be able to test the hypothesis which party cut it more than the other. Does it make sense? But we don't have that data. So, but we're trying. Now here, basically what it shows is Congress cut the budget. It's not the president so far. And then in terms of the service, so this is grand, like in total, this is like decomposed. For service, it's the Senate that cut the budget most significantly, not the president nor the House. It is the Senate. Okay. And then for facilities, no, it's not being cut at all. And somewhat it's actually increased a little bit. So if you want to do policy advocacy or policy influence, go to Senate and identify the senators that we identify in our articles to influence them. and the reasons, so I don't have to worry about my job after, I'm joking, I'm trying to get my tenure. So here are the reasons for IHS discretionary budget cuts. These are the three major reasons. One is IHS itself underestimate its own budget. Basically, historically, if you calculate your budget really low, then in the future it's just harder to increase your budget, harder to justify yourself. And then the budget authority face fiscal constraints because, look, if we go over the debt, if we cannot, like U.S. federal government, if we cannot pay the interest, then we lower our credit rating, and then it's harder to borrow money from creditors again. And then federal government have to impose a higher tax in order to pay for the higher cost of borrowing money, and we all will be imposed on higher tax. That's not good for anybody, right? So, and then the Congress concerns about the inefficiencies in IHS funds. But this is a chicken and egg problem because some senators criticize and say, oh, you don't deserve more funding because historically you hired bad doctors who had misconduct, harassed the patients and everything. So you don't deserve more funding. But the IHS officials argued back and said, well, because you didn't give us enough funding. We had to hire doctors who had problems everywhere, and that's the only doctors that we can hire, so you cannot criticize. So it's chicken and egg problem. And then the existing solutions, in the interest of time, I will not go through this, but I just quickly point out, these two are not working. Which propose mandatory spending. It's just not working, as you can see from people's different values, basically. And here, these two solutions, one is propose, each tribe funding through IHS, convert that into Medicaid insurance. But that's not gonna work because that's insurance, and also it requires different tribes, like management and operation. Different tribes, they just have different abilities. Some tribes have a lot of corruption problems, so you just simply can't rely on that. And there's Federal Indian Health Insurance Plan. This could allow the Native Americans go to any, OU or anywhere, private providers outside of their own network. So it's efficient, but it's inefficient because, it basically, there would be no federal buildings, federal facilities on the reservations. There is no fixed cost there. It's just like allocation, the insurance kind of like reimbursement. So the tribe members, they just really worried. They're like, okay, if we don't see the real beauty, if it's just all the money, then one day the federal government can say, we don't want to give you this money, period. There's no building anymore. So they resisted that. So that's why none of these solutions work. The last slide is that we propose our own solution, which is called IHS Trust Fund. So this is inspired by Vaccine Injury Compensation Trust Fund, which has been very successful since 1986. So what this does is to charge excise tax on vaccine doses being consumed or being sold in the United States. It's charged on manufacturers, but it's basically paid by manufacturers and consumers. So there's this excise tax revenue being put in this trust fund. And then the US Department of Treasury, they invested the balance in the trust fund, but it's just treasury bills. But they invested that, the interest revenue also goes to this trust fund, so that every year they just pay those compensation claims. So there's a lot of money being left. I think so far it's more than $4 million for this tiny trust fund, and it has been very successful, very consistent. So I published this article. By the way, it's been cited by Congressional Research Service and also cited by an open letter by 19 attorney generals written to President Biden. I didn't even know, but one day I saw that, I was like, okay, thank you. So anyway, so that article that I did the research on this trust fund, and then one day I was sitting there, I was like, okay, this has been very successful, raise money, why can't we use the same idea to raise money for IHS? So I'm like, okay, we can have a trust fund. So basic idea is very similar. Congress will just give a tiny amount to get it started. It's like a tiny amount. And then Congress should just do lip service. If Congress doesn't want to give money, real money to IHS because of the gap, then at least please do lip service. Authorize them legally, okay? Authorize them to be able to accept donations. And this donation could be cash, could be properties, anything that can be converted into cash if IHS needs it. And then this can be, so basically these are the principle. And the principle can be contracted to any professional investors somewhere, Wall Street, or maybe somewhere at Morgan Stanley. Yeah, it's your task, I'm joking. So basically, this can be used to earn investment interest revenue, and the interest revenue can be used to pay for the gap that IHS needs every year. So now the question is, so that's the idea. So not use the principal, but only use the interest revenue. Now the question is, how much do we need in the principal? Right? So how much we need in the principal is depending on how much we need every year in order to generate, how much interest revenue we need, right? So based on data, historical data, we have a gap every year that IHS needs at least $60 million that they need, they proposed, but the enacted amount was not there, was short. So the gap is $60 million. Okay, now if the return, the ROI rate, I'm very optimistic, let's say 10% roughly, then that means, well, I know the current economy is like probably 6%, I guess. So if it's 10%, then the principal would be $600 million in that trust fund to raise as a principal. If each endowment is 1 million, so this means that 600 endowments. But once, this is a lot of effort, right? But 600 endowments to make, once you can reach that goal, this trust fund will be there permanently to benefit the Native American healthcare generation after generation. Thank you. So as some conclusions, it's the first time to evaluate the budget discrepancies. Use the most recent data and compared the solutions and propose our own solutions. By the way, I talked to, I don't know if you guys know him or not, Gerald Gamble. Do you guys know him? So I was in a concert, he was sitting behind me with his wife, Ginger, and during the intermission, we were just chatting. And he said, what have you been doing? I told him I published about this article, this novel solution. Just during the intermission, he got so excited. He said, you should send it to Tom Cole. And I said, I don't know Tom Cole's email address. And then he said, well, just tell everybody who can help you. I said, okay. And then I saw Sony and Robert, and they asked me what I've been doing. And I told them I published the article. And then, but you guys know Robert, he's from Chickasaw Nation, right? So I said, Robert, I know you would be interested. And then Sony said, she said, you know what? You can send it to Robert. Robert knows Governor Anatoly, and Anatoly can send it to Tom Cole. And I said, great, you solved the problem. So I just sent them, I think it's somewhere on the desk with somebody, so I hope it will work. Oh, by the way, I got an NPR interview 2 weeks ago. They're just really interested. They want people to know.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Any questions, comments?
So I have a question about your solution. What if the trust fund actually ends up being funded and has enough to close the gap in its interest and earnings? What's to prevent the perverse outcome of the Congress or the Senate then cutting the allocations?
Yeah, I was actually worried. Yes, it probably will make them think that, okay, actually, if you guys can do a good job, raise your funding, then it will make them actually allocate less funding. So with this, we will have to say that federal government will have to fully fulfill their trust responsibility, and this is just a intermediary type of pragmatic solution to make ends meet, but federal government should not rely on this. And also one more thing in addition to that is that should we reach out to tribes asking for donations? Probably not. Despite, I'm sure Chick-fil-A would be willing to, because if you ask the tribes to donate it to the trust fund, which should be paid by federal government, so then it's just the law, the logic is just doesn't make any sense.
You have lost your credibility.
Exactly, yeah.
My question is, I have the impression that large tribal reservation Indians, like let's say the Navajos and so forth out there, as compared with the Oklahoma tribes, have different situations, different needs, so you're going to end up probably having to have some dialogue among the various tribes before you can have something that fits all their needs. And because I don't think the Congress is going to just give the Indian Health Service X amount of money or elaborate this without having some stipulations, and those may not fit the needs of some of the tribes, particularly the reservation tribes.
Yeah, that's what they do now. I mean, as I understand it, what June is proposing is that you have a trust fund that distributes money in much the same way IHS distributes money now, except that the trust fund provides for that gap to be made up, so there's more money to give out.
Yeah.
And that's already within the context of what you're talking about.
Okay.
So I don't see that there's any, IHS is already working with, say, a Pueblo tribe is a different thing than Navajo tribe. Everybody is different, even on traditional reservations. And then when you add in Oklahoma, which is a complete outlier,
Right.
it's completely different again. And yet, they all have structures in place with IHS.
Okay.
So
Well, that raises the interesting possibility. You've described this system for allocating among different tribe situations that IHS uses. Should the trust fund simply ride on top of it, or should it have a parallel system? It'd be inefficient to have a parallel system.
Exactly. It's on top of it. It's just trying to meet the gap. And also for the funding sources to see how feasible it is. We actually found that Mackenzie Scott, she donated, in the past several years, she donated more than $200 million to Native American nonprofits. So this is one sources. And Bill Gates Foundation and like other foundations somewhere in Seattle, like Washington, they have also donated a lot. And also globally, there were foundations donated to US, UK, Australia. I'm not sure about Canadian, but like international nonprofits and donate to indigenous people's health and environment causes. So I think for this trust fund with 600 endowments for probably decades effort, I think it's not something not feasible. Yeah. And once it's done, it's permanently benefits them. This is a solution that we proposed. But I hope somebody will do it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Judy.
Thank you.
If anybody didn't pay their $20, you can put it in the hat over there. And Ian, do you have an announcement about the
I
video
do.
game?
Yeah, on the 22nd, on Saturday, the 22nd, 10 o'clock.
Oh.
It's the game. Anybody who, it said Louise by the lake again, and we'll meet up with a few brave
Now that's football, right?
Yaleys. That is. Sorry, change of topic.
Just
Slightly.
making sure, just